With us now, the Canadian Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly. Minister Joly, where do negotiations stand right now between Canada and the United States? Are you talking with the Trump administration? Is there any hope for a last-minute reprieve?
Well, at this point, there's no there are ongoing discussions, but there's no ongoing negotiation. I was at NATO last week, saw Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, had some constructive conversations, but at the same time, we're still under tariffs for steel and aluminum. We're still under tariffs because of also the auto sector. We just, as you mentioned, Jake, we just imposed new tariffs for all non-USMCA compliant cars coming to Canada. And also what we're under is that 25% tariff based on fentanyl crossing the Canadian border going into the US. Well, we know that actually there's less than 1% of all fentanyl going into the US that comes from Canada. So we know that tariffs are a tax on hardworking Americans. I was watching your report. We know that it is a tax on Americans' grocery bill. It is a tax when also Americans go at the gas pump. And more than that, what we're seeing now, it is also just a double whammy, because not only is it a tax, not only will people pay more, but at the same time, they're losing more because markets are in turmoil and people are losing money for their retirement.
Yeah.
So nobody's winning out of this trade war. And the first impacted are those watching us right now, the hardworking American people.
So today, a journalist asked White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about the timing of any tariff negotiations. Take a listen.
Is the president operating on any sort of a timeline or deadline where he wants this completed by?
Well, we always move at Trump speed here at the White House, which is incredibly fast. All options are on the table for each country. But again, these are going to be tailor-made deals. They are not going to be off-the-rack deals, as the president has called it.
So she says that they're moving at Trump speed. What do you make of that? Is it possible that there will be speedy trade negotiations?
So we're in a campaign right now. The elections in Canada are on April 28th. The Prime Minister Carney, and President Trump had a first phone call. We said that we would be ready to negotiate after the election, which are basically in less than 3 weeks. At the same time, we want to make sure that we can negotiate not only on trade, but also on security. And we need a full partnership. But at the end of the day, what we know, Jake, is the relationship between Canada and the U.S. will never be the same. The trust was affected by what happened. This trade war was launched out of nowhere against your best ally, friend, and neighbor. And we want to make sure that we can be constructive, but we're not naive neither. We know we have to protect our own jobs and our own economy. And of course, meanwhile, we're talking to the world. And the world is reacting in different ways. Canada is leading the charge in terms of our own response, making sure that we have counter tariffs against American products. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned, the American people are the ones that are most affected. So my message also to those watching us, Jake, right now is please talk to your Congress people, talk to your governors, talk to people in power, because they all need to send a clear message to the White House that that's enough.
Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly, thank you so much. CNN's Ivan Watson is in Hong Kong for us, and CNN's Jeff Zeleny is at the White House. Jeff, there are more developments in this Elon Musk versus Peter Navarro public spat. But first, tell us what the White House is saying ahead of these global tariffs set to go into effect this evening.
Well, Jake, just a few minutes to go here in the East Room of the White House. The president defended his tariff policy once again, and he talked about the open-door negotiations that many countries now are having. Japan, one key example. He said flying here to Washington to negotiate anew with the White House. He said sometimes you have to mix it up a little bit. But there is no question here that this is one of the most severe effects we've seen on the economy just 6 days after announcing that plan. But just a few moments ago in the East Room, he defended his tariff proposals.
We're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals. Right now, Japan is flying here to make a deal. South Korea is flying here to make a deal, and others are flying here. It's been amazing what's happened. Sometimes you have to mix it up a little bit.
Amazing what's happened. That's also the view on Wall Street, but in a very different way. The president not acknowledging the deep losses again today in the financial markets. He's also not weighing in the ongoing spat between his top advisors, which Elon Musk continued this afternoon. Of course, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said earlier, boys will be boys. But Elon Musk continued that, saying this, Jake, I'd like to apologize to all the BRICS for calling Peter a sack of bricks earlier. It was unfair to those BRICS. So clearly going back and forth, Navarro, the top trade advisor here, not responding to Elon Musk.
Yeah, and
Jake?
using a slur for the intellectually disabled.
The R word.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ivan, 104% tariffs are set to go into effect on China at midnight. The White House says China wants to make a deal, but they don't know how to get it started. What is the government of China saying, and how will these massive tariffs impact the overall trade war?
Right. Well, the Chinese are not backing down right now. They are accusing the U.S. of abusing these tariffs, saying this smacks of unilateralism and protectionism. They say they do not see signs that the Trump administration wants to talk or wants to have a genuine dialogue. And the spokesperson for the foreign ministry in Beijing on Tuesday said that China would fight to the end in a trade war that it says it does not want. Take a listen.
Pressure, threats, and blackmail are not the right ways to engage with China. If the U.S. disregards the interests of both countries and the international community, insists on launching a tariff or trade war, China will fight to the end.
Right. So no signs at all of backing down. Of course, China has a trade surplus with the U.S. It has about last year it had about $582 billion worth of exports to the U.S., which dwarfs the U.S. imports to China. And that gets to the crux of what President Trump is so angry about. So China does stand to potentially lose more trade here. When President Trump first announced the tariffs last week, China waited till Friday, a national holiday, the tomb sweeping holiday, to announce that it would match his 34% tariffs. We have yet to hear how it would respond to him doubling those in effect. Chinese state media has suggested some of the potential measures that it could take, which is to further tariff U.S. agricultural products, soybeans and sorghum, which are imported in large amounts, pausing cooperation on fentanyl, restricting U.S. films going to Chinese cinemas, and creating further barriers to services. Those are some of the measures that could potentially move forward. The Chinese have also been saying that they've had 8 years to prepare for this. A final thing here, as both countries are preparing to weather this trade war and storm, is that there is a nationalist response. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, repeatedly referred to Chinese peasants, in his words, producing these imports. That has been viewed many times on Chinese social media with a lot of outrage, and the foreign ministry responded to that, calling his remarks ignorant and impolite, referring again to Chinese as peasants. Jake.
All right, Ivan Watson in Hong Kong. Thanks so much. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich is at a New York City grocery store. Vanessa, give us an idea. What are some of the products that will be immediately impacted by tariffs, and how are local businesses, stores like the one you're in, preparing?
Yeah, the grocery store is the place where Americans are likely to feel these higher tariffs and these price increases first on things like fresh produce that come in and out of the country every single day. Here at Morton Williams, where we are, they haven't seen the high prices yet, but they are bracing for them on fresh produce like bananas. They get shipments in 6 days a week. These are from Costa Rica. These over here are from Ecuador. Both countries hit with that 10% universal tariff that went into effect on Saturday. I want to take you to the seafood section here because this is where some of the prices might rise the most, because those countries where Morton Williams, this store, gets their seafood are getting hit with those high reciprocal tariffs set to take effect at midnight. This shrimp over here, they get it from Indonesia and also from Vietnam. A 32% tariff on Indonesia, 46% on Vietnam. And then salmon. The U.S. imports more than $1 billion worth of fish every single year. This salmon comes from Norway. They're being hit with a 15% tariff. I want to walk you over, Jake, to the coffee section. Coffee prices have seen really record high prices in recent months because of bad climate, bad weather in key coffee growing countries, mainly in Africa. So this is the coffee section here. Hello, miss. And these companies may have been able to stockpile a bit because these are non-perishable items. However, once those stockpiles run out, Jake, these coffee items, some in particular from Brazil and Ethiopia, are getting hit with that 10% tariff. And ultimately, these grocery stores, these types of grocery stores run on such thin margins, Jake, that the owner says, unfortunately, they are just going to have to pass that cost down to you, the consumer. Jake.
All right.